Now reporting from Washington, Frank Reynolds.
Good evening. The Middle East Summit meeting at Camp David is over, and a high administration official says a significant step toward peace has been taken at the summit. President Carter, President Sadat of Egypt, and Prime Minister Beygen of Israel have come down from the mountaintop after nearly 2 solid weeks of discussion and decisions. This was the scene as they arrived at the White House just a few minutes ago. In approximately 1 minute from now, the 3 world leaders will appear in the East Room of the White House, and finally at least some of the extraordinary secrecy that has been in effect in an unprecedented way will come to an end. And that is why we are interrupting your entertainment on this Sunday evening. Shortly we will learn the result of this bold, perhaps even desperate attempt to find a framework for peace in the Middle East, where there have been 4 wars in 30 years. What is it we are likely to be told tonight? We have had some information. And as we await the arrival of the leaders, here is our diplomatic correspondent, Ted Koppel.
Frank, within the next couple of minutes, President Sadat and Prime Minister Beygen will actually be signing 2 documents. They are of the nature of, or rather are of a preliminary nature. The one document dealing with the nature of peace on the West Bank and in the Gaza, dealing more specifically with the Palestinian issue. The other document, which may in fact be the more remarkable of the 2, raises the possibility that within the next few months, a very real peace relationship may actually exist between Egypt and Israel. In fact, it raises the possibility of a peace agreement between those 2 countries.
The East Room is filled with members of the delegations from both Israel and Egypt, as well as American officials, including some who participated in the ceremony or in the summit meeting at Camp David. This has all been rather hastily arranged. Only a couple of hours ago was the word given out at Fairmont
Ladies and
that
gentlemen,
this meeting will take place.
Of the United
Here's the
States,
announcement.
the President of the Arab Republic of Egypt, and the Prime Minister of Israel.
We have not seen these 3 together very much in the last 13 days. We understand, by the way, that the President will speak, and so will President Sadat and Prime Minister Beygen. And the President will speak first. They are receiving the same kind of applause they were given tonight when they arrived at the White House and walked across the South Lawn. There is Moshe Dayan next to Zbigniew Brzezinski, the Israeli ambassador to the United States, and to Nimitz. Everybody is smiling. And as Ted Koppel has indicated, they may well have good reason to be smiling. Moshe Dayan.
When we first arrived at Camp David, the first thing upon which we agreed was to ask the people of the world to pray that our negotiations would be successful. Those prayers have been answered far beyond any expectations. We are privileged to witness tonight a significant achievement in the cause of peace, an achievement none thought possible a year ago, or even a month ago, an achievement that reflects the courage and wisdom of these 2 leaders. Through 13 long days at Camp David, we have seen them display determination and vision and flexibility, which was needed to make this agreement come to pass. All of us owe them our gratitude and respect. They know that they will always have my personal admiration. There are still great difficulties that remain, and many hard issues to be settled. The questions that have brought warfare and bitterness to the Middle East for the last 30 years will not be settled overnight. But we should all recognize the substantial achievements that have been made. One of the agreements that President Sadat and Prime Minister Beygen are signing tonight is entitled A Framework for Peace in the Middle East. This framework concerns the principles and some specifics in the most substantive way which will govern a comprehensive peace settlement. It deals specifically with the future of the West Bank and Gaza and the need to resolve the Palestinian problem in all its aspects. The framework document proposes a 5-year transitional period in the West Bank and Gaza, during which the Israeli military government will be withdrawn and a self-governing authority will be elected with full autonomy. It also provides for Israeli forces to remain in specified locations during this period to protect Israel's security. The Palestinians will have the right to participate in the determination of their own future in negotiations which will resolve the final status of the West Bank and Gaza, and then to produce an Israeli-Jordanian peace treaty. These negotiations will be based on all the provisions and all the principles of United Nations Security Council Resolution 242, and it provides that Israel may live in peace within secure and recognized borders. And this great aspiration of Israel has been certified without constraint with the greatest degree of enthusiasm by President Sadat, the leader of one of the greatest nations on earth. The other document is entitled Framework for the Conclusion of a Peace Treaty between Egypt and Israel. It provides for the full exercise of Egyptian sovereignty over the Sinai. It calls for the full withdrawal of Israeli forces from the Sinai. And after an interim withdrawal, which will be accomplished very quickly, the establishment of normal, peaceful relations between the two countries, including diplomatic relations. Together with accompanying letters, which we will make public tomorrow, these two Camp David agreements provide the basis for progress and peace throughout the Middle East. There is one issue on which agreement has not been reached. Egypt states that the agreement to remove Israeli settlements from Egyptian territory is a prerequisite to a peace treaty. Israel states that the issue of the Israeli settlements should be resolved during the peace negotiations. That's a substantial difference. Within the next 2 weeks, the Knesset will decide on the issue of these settlements. Tomorrow night, I will go before the Congress to explain these agreements more fully and to talk about their implications for the United States and for the world. For the moment, and in closing, I want to speak more personally about my admiration for all of those who have taken part in this process, and my hope that the promise of this moment will be fulfilled. During the last 2 weeks, the members of all three delegations have spent endless hours, day and night, talking, negotiating, grappling with problems that have divided their people for 30 years. Whenever there was a danger that human energy would fail, or patience would be exhausted, or goodwill would run out, and there were many such moments, these two leaders and the able advisors in all delegations found the resources within them to keep the chances for peace alive. Well, the long days at Camp David are over, but many months of difficult negotiations still lie ahead. I hope that the foresight and the wisdom that have made this session a success will guide these leaders and the leaders of all nations as they continue the progress toward peace. Thank you very much.
It was a remarkable sight to see Menachem Begin applauding Anwar Sadat after the president described him as the leader of one of the greatest nations on earth. The applause was sustained and vigorous. Vice President Mondale in the front row. The president seems both exhausted and exhilarated, and there is good reason apparently for both. President Sadat.
Dear President Carter, in this historic moment, I would like to express to you my heartfelt congratulations and appreciation. For long days and nights, you devoted your time and energy to the pursuit of peace. You have been most courageous when you took the gigantic step of convening this meeting. The challenge was great and the risks were high, but so was your determination. You made a commitment to be a full partner in the peace process. I'm happy to say that you have honored your commitment. The signing of the framework for the comprehensive peace settlement has a significance far beyond the event. It signals the emergence of a new peace initiative with the American nation in the heart of the entire process. In the weeks ahead, important decisions have to be made if we are to proceed on the road to peace. We have to reaffirm the faith of the Palestinian people in the ideal of peace. The continuation of your active role is indispensable. We need your help and the support of the American people. Let me seize this opportunity to thank each and every American for his genuine interest in the cause of people in the Middle East. Dear friend, we came to Camp David with all the goodwill and faith we possess, and we left Camp David a few minutes ago with a renewed sense of hope and inspiration. We are looking forward to the days ahead with an added determination to pursue the noble goal of peace. Your able assistance spared no effort to bring out this happy conclusion. We appreciate their spirit and dedication. Our hosts at Camp David and the state of Maryland were most generous and hospitable. To each one of them and to all those who are watching this great event, I say thank you. Let us join in a prayer to God Almighty to guide our path. Let us pledge to make the spirit of Camp David a new chapter in the history of our nations. Thank you, Mr. President.
Well, probably not since Anwar Sadat stepped off the plane in Jerusalem last November have hopes for peace been so high as at this moment. That initiative foundered for a time, and indeed it was because the initiative had broken down, sidetracked, that Mr. Carter called this extraordinary summit meeting to bring together these two men, leaders of countries who have been at war 4 times in 30 years, to try to hammer out some means of keeping history from repeating itself. Now the Prime Minister.
Mr. President of the United States, Mr. President of the Arab Republic of Egypt, ladies and gentlemen, the Camp David Conference should be renamed. It was the Jimmy Carter Conference. The President undertook an initiative most imaginative in our time and brought President Sadat and myself and our colleagues and friends and advisors together under one roof. In itself, it was a great achievement. But the President took a great risk for himself and did it with great civil courage. And it was a famous French field commander who said that it is much more difficult to show civil courage than military courage. And the President worked. As far as my historic experience is concerned, I think that he worked harder than our forefathers did in Egypt building the pyramids. Yes, indeed. He worked day and night. And so did we. Amen. Day and night. We used to go to bed at Camp David between 3 and 4 o'clock in the morning, rise as we are used to since our boyhood between 5 and 6, and continue working. The President showed interest in every section, every paragraph, every sentence, every word, every letter of the framework agreement. We had some difficult moments. As usually, there are some crises in negotiations. As usually, somebody gives a hint that perhaps he would like to pack up and go home. It's all usual. But ultimately, ladies and gentlemen, the President of the United States won the day. And peace now celebrates a great victory for the nations of Egypt and Israel and for all mankind. Mr. President, we the Israelis thank you from the bottom of our hearts for all you have done for the sake of peace, for which we pray and yearn more than 30 years. The Jewish people suffered much, too much. And therefore peace to us is a striving coming innermost from our heart and soul. Now, when I came here to the Camp David conference, I said, perhaps as a result of our work, one day people will in every corner of the world be able to say, Habemus Pacem, in the spirit of these days. Can we say so tonight? Not yet. We still have to go a road until my friend President Sadat and I sign the peace treaties. We promised each other that we shall do so within 3 months. Mr. President, tonight, at this celebration of a great historic event, let us promise each other that we shall do it earlier than within 3 months. Mr. President, you inscribed your name forever in the history of 2 ancient civilized peoples, the people of Egypt and the people of Israel. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you.
No. I would like to say a few words about my friend, President Sadat. We met for the first time in our lives last November in Jerusalem. He came to us as a guest, a former enemy, and during our first meeting we became friends. In the Jewish teachings there is a tradition that the greatest achievement of a human being is to turn his enemy into a friend. And this we do in reciprocity. Since then we had some difficult days. I'm not going now to tell you the saga of those days. Everything belongs to the past. Today I visited President Sadat in his cabin, because in Camp David you don't have houses, you only have cabins. And he then came to visit me, we shook hands, and thank God, we again could have said to each other, you are my friend. And indeed we shall go on working in understanding and in friendship and with goodwill. We will still have problems to solve. Camp David proved that any problem can be solved if there is goodwill and understanding and some wisdom. May I thank my own colleagues and friends, the Foreign Minister, the Defense Minister, Professor Barak, who was the Attorney General, and now he is going to be, His Honor, the Justice of the Supreme Court, the Israeli Brandes, and Dr. Rosen, and our wonderful ambassador to the United States, Mr. Simcha Dinitz, and all our friends, because without them that achievement wouldn't have been possible. I express my thanks to all the members of the American delegation, headed by the Secretary of State, a man whom we love and respect. And so I express my thanks to all the members of the Egyptian delegation who worked so hard together with us, headed by Deputy Prime Minister Mr. Tahani, for all they have done to achieve this moment. It is a great moment in the history of our nations and indeed of mankind. I looked for a president. I didn't find it. It was a unique conference, perhaps one of the most important since the Vienna Conference in the 19th century, perhaps. And now, ladies and gentlemen, allow me to turn to my own people from the White House in my own native tongue. אזרחי ישראל, כאשר תשמעו את דבריי אלה, יהיה זה בוקר, תעיזו שעה מוקדמת, ותזרח השמש בארץ אבותינו ובנינו. האם נוכל לבוא עליכם בעוד ימים מספר, ולשיר יחד עמכם, הבאנו שלום עליכם? זאת תוכל לומר לכם, כפי שעשינו עד כה כל מאמץ אנושי אפשרי, כדי להביאו כן נוסיף, עד אשר יבוא היום, וכל אחד מאיתנו יוכל לומר, בא השלום על עמנו ועל ארצנו, לא רק בדור הזה, אלא גם בדורות הבאים. בעזרת השם, יחד נשיג את המטרה הזאת, ונזכה לימים טובים של בניין ואחווה והבנה. כן יהי רצון. Thank you.
Well, unfortunately, we're unable to tell you precisely what Prime Minister Beigen said, speaking in Hebrew, but we heard the word shalom, shalom, many times, and I think the meaning of that word is clear. Now they embrace. What a picture, what a picture. And the room, of course, is erupted in cheering and applause. What precisely have they agreed to? Well, decision, we probably cannot say, but we can give you, as soon as they finish the signing here, they're actually going to sign these documents. Two documents. One, calling for a framework for peace, establishing the broad principles for a settlement on the West Bank and the Gaza Strip.
The first document that we will sign is entitled A Framework for Peace in the Middle East, agreed at Camp David. And the text of these two documents will be released tomorrow. The documents will be signed by President Sadat and Prime Minister Beigen, and it will be witnessed by me. We have to exchange three documents, so we'll all sign three times for this one.
As the President said, the first one is a framework for peace in the Middle East. It sets forth the broad principles for a settlement on the West Bank, in Gaza, a resolution of the Palestinian problem. It calls for the participation of the Palestinians in a determination of their own future. It calls for an Israeli withdrawal over a period of 5 years. The second is a framework for a treaty of peace between Egypt and Israel, calling for phased withdrawals of Israeli forces from the Sinai. That is the one that contains a caveat that might possibly still prove to be a difficult problem, because the Egyptians insist that the settlements...
I might say that the first document is quite comprehensive in nature, encompassing a framework by which Israel can later negotiate peace treaties between herself and Lebanon, Syria, Jordan, as well as the outline of this document that we will now sign. And as you will later see in studying the documents, it also provides for the realization of the hopes and dreams of the people who live in the West Bank and Gaza Strip, and will assure Israel peace in the generations ahead. This second document is the one relating to a framework for a peace treaty between Egypt and Israel. And this is a document that calls for the completion of the peace treaty negotiations within 3 months. And I have noticed the challenge extended by these two gentlemen to each other, and that they will complete within 3 months. I might say that this document encompasses almost all of the issues between the two countries and resolves those issues. A few lines remain to be drawn on maps, and the question of the settlements is to be resolved. Other than that, most of the major issues are resolved already in this document, and we will now sign this document as well.
The question of the settlements. President Sadat demands that as a prerequisite to signing the peace treaty between Israel and Egypt, that the settlements in the Sinai be resolved. And we understand, as the President said, the Knesset, the Israeli Parliament, will deal with that question in the next 2 weeks. I must say there is a strong feeling that that question will be resolved to the satisfaction of the Egyptians. And if that is so, what we are witnessing here is the beginning of a treaty of peace between Egypt and Israel. And they both pledge, a promise is backed in writing, to sign that peace treaty within 3 months, and as Mr. Bacon pointed out, they should try to do it even earlier.
Very much.
There is the three-way handshake, the President of the United States, the President of Egypt, and the Prime Minister of Israel. Dedicated foes until relatively recent times. And the President is giving each one a pen. That's an old presidential custom around here, to pass out pens that are used in the signing of historic documents. This one, I suspect, is a good deal more historic than a great many others. Now, as the principals make their way out of the crowded East Room, I want to call in our White House correspondent, Sam Donaldson. And Sam, though everybody is smiling and obviously very happy, this was a very close call, was it not? There were some very difficult times.
Yes, it was, Frank. I'm told that 36 hours ago, these gentlemen had nothing in their hands but quicksand. And it was, as we suspected, the imposition of the deadline of the end of the conference for today, the realization by everyone concerned that it was now or never, that caused the negotiations within these last 36 hours to bear fruit. As a matter of fact, early this afternoon, there was still some question as to whether we would be here tonight signing these two documents. But now it's rather mind-boggling, is it not, Frank, to think that within 3 months from tonight we could have a peace treaty signed between Egypt and Israel, and that within 5 years we could perhaps resolve all of the questions of the West Bank and the Gaza. Mr. Carter will certainly be given a lot of credit for bringing these leaders to this point and bringing the Middle East peace negotiations to this step, and I suppose a great many people will believe that Mr. Carter richly deserves it. But then, of course, it's not done yet, as Ted Koppel can tell us.
Well, Frank, as you pointed out, there is that one issue to be resolved now within the next 2 weeks by the Knesset, by the Israeli Parliament. I simply cannot believe, however, that with actual peace so close at hand between Israel and Egypt, that the Knesset will allow this issue of a few settlements in the Sinai to undo what has been agreed to. And what has been agreed to is total sovereignty for the Egyptians over the Sinai, total Israeli military withdrawal over a period that might last as long as 3 years, and within 3 months an actual peace agreement and total normalization of relations between Israel and Egypt. When you stop to consider it for even a moment, it is an astonishing achievement.
And when you think, as Sam pointed out, that 36 hours ago they may have held nothing in their hands except quicksand. I must say, all week long at Thurmont, Maryland, when we would receive the, well, I guess you could call them briefings, but they really were not very informative, there was sort of a yo-yo feeling. 1 minute they were up, and the next day they were down, and it was very, very difficult to know whether they actually were making progress, but obviously they have. We'll have a closing thought in just a moment after this message. So it is over, a meeting literally at the summit, the top of a mountain in Maryland, some 7,000 miles away from the mountains and plains and deserts of the Middle East. A meeting that has produced, as Anwar Sadat said tonight, a renewed sense of hope and inspiration, and as Menachem Begin said, peace now celebrates a great victory. Well, the President will address a joint meeting of the Congress tomorrow night at 8 o'clock Eastern Time to deliver a more detailed report on the discussions at Camp David, discussions that he said led to our prayers being answered. ABC News will broadcast the President's speech live at that hour. This is Frank Reynolds in Washington for ABC News. Good night.